Good morning. Welcome to CareyTrainsMe. I'm on the farm this morning. It is a cold fall day. It is overcast and rainy, and I could not be happier. We've had a very, very hot summer here in BC. Talking today about some fear response in animals, and the dog daddy has kind of prompted this video when it comes to dogs that are fearful. And we always hear kind of fight or flight response. We always hear the dogs in fight or flight. I'm going to elaborate a bit more on that and talk a bit about the 5 Fs, which are more than just fight or flight, and also talk about why trainers are outraged about the dog daddy and why the dog daddy shouldn't reflect on all balanced trainers, and also what to do if you actually have a reactive or aggressive dog and what steps to take. And I will include a link to a blog that I wrote about this below, as well as a link to dog body language. So enjoying a cup of coffee. It's going to be a bit of a lengthy video. I'm out with my 2 dogs just roaming. They're roaming the farm, having a great time, so I may be interrupted periodically, just calling them back if they're chasing the chickens or being trouble. Dog daddy. The controversy with dog daddy is simply that he's putting dogs in a fearful situation, pushing them over threshold, and then he's manhandling using harsh techniques like suspending dogs in the air with a prong collar on or a slip leash on, cutting off air supply, swinging them around by leash. There's been quite a few videos that are pretty upsetting to watch, and unfortunately he makes a ton of money on YouTube, TikTok. He's been recently banned from TikTok, in Instagram and social media platforms, because he gets millions of views because it looks like an instant cure-all fix. And if this was the case, that this was an instant cure-all fix, don't you think that every single trainer on the planet would do it regardless of how it looked? Don't you think we would fix all aggressive dogs and all reactive dogs, and there would be no bad dogs? It's not a thing. It doesn't work. And I'm going to get into why it doesn't work. And this is not a personal attack on the dog daddy. This has nothing to do with dog daddy. I don't know him. I don't care for him, or I don't care against him. I've watched probably 2 or 3 dozen videos of his, and all of them are really small snippets. And the challenging part is these small snippets for the layperson would be encouraging someone to practice and do the same, which is what I don't want, and what the trainers that are protesting him for coming to Canada do not want, because it doesn't work. If it worked, we would all be doing it, and it would all be done. And this fellow charges $1,500 for 1 session. Well, if I had proof that this worked, wouldn't I want to make $1,500 a session and just yank and crank some dog around by its neck until it surrendered and make tons of money and know that I'm doing better in the world? It doesn't work that way. So I'm going to get into why. And again, it's not even really about the dog daddy. I think the dog daddy is a symptom. My personal opinion is he is a symptom of social media and followers. He, on his website, I took a dive into that. He doesn't put credentials. He doesn't put courses that he's taken. He doesn't put workshops that he's taken. He puts up his awards of how many YouTube followers he has. And his accolades are how many visitors and views he gets per post, and how many followers he has versus how many courses or educational workshops, classes, seminars, online courses. I mean, you can do anything. I commit to taking at least 3 different new courses a year, and some of those are 3 days, some of them are week-long, some of them are months-long. So anyway, this particular individual I believe is a symptom of social media, and the goal is to create sensational content to get more views. The goal is not to to help dogs become better, to help humans become better stewards to their animals, which is what I really believe we are on this planet to do. And that's the hard part for me when it comes to the dog daddy, which is why I'm making this incredibly long video. So, not personal about the dog daddy. Personally, I feel that he is a symptom of social media. He is a character that has been created to drive views and to create controversy and get more views. And it's not about dogs. It's not about relationships. It's not about dog psychology. It's not about the human not understanding their dog. It's about views. Otherwise, you wouldn't have 2-minute videos of ranking a dog around by the leash and then showing them walking calmly by a dog when the dog is clearly terrified. And I'm going to get into why that doesn't work. So it's been a long introduction, but here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the 5 F's. So when we have the 5 F's, the first one is fight or flight, which I talked about in the beginning. Then we also have fidget. So when we think about when we're experiencing stress, we have fight or flight. That's when, the blood comes from our extremities into our organs. Our brain is basically just trying to escape. Then we also have fidget. So fidget may be a little bit less in terms of a response, but still a response to stress. You also have freeze. So freeze is a very big component to stress, especially when dogs are fearful, and not just dogs, this is humans, this is all animals. So you have fight, flight, pretty self-explanatory, freeze, and then you have fidget. So fidget may be pacing, it may be looking overhead, it looks like they're hyper vigilant, it could be whining, pacing back and forth, it could be stopping and chewing and lying down and chewing on their paws, biting at the leash, it could be a variety of different things that would be fidget. And then we also see one which is to act like a fool. And the typical act like a fool may be a silly, I use a lab as an example, a silly lab, or maybe a golden retriever. They're a teenager, they meet new people, they're jumping up, they're mouthing, they're biting the leash, they start running zoomies, and they're running all over the place, and they're completely overstimulated every time they go into new places, and they start to act like this. So again, we've got fight or flight, freeze. Those are pretty severe in terms of like the chemistry in your body is completely changing. We also have fidget, and we'll have act like a fool. So we've kind of got 5 F's that happen when we have stress. So what happens when we're in a stressful state? Your brain doesn't work in terms of, and this is all animals. If you were just in a car accident and someone asks you, what's your husband's phone number? What's your wife's phone number? What's your mom's phone number? You can't remember. What if they ask you what your address is, your home address, you've lived there for all your life? You can't remember. If they ask you where you work, you can't remember because you're so stressed and in shock about that situation that you're just in, like a car accident or maybe being mugged. Mugged might be a better example. Your brain cannot physically recall that information because it's in a protection mode. So if we have animals that are in a protection mode, in terms of their body is in a state that they cannot control, they can't stop and take 10 deep breaths and be like, everything is going to be fine, namaste, I'm cool. Doesn't work like that. So if we have an animal that's in this stress, how can we expect them to learn? And also, how can we expect them to be conditioned? So you have conditioning, which means, like, let's say every time I really like to have my hair stroked. I don't particularly, but let's say I do. Every time someone greets me, they stroke my hair. I really enjoy it and I'm happy. I have been conditioned every time I walk up to a stranger, they're going to stroke my hair. I'm going to really enjoy it and it's going to be relaxing and I'm going to be at peace with it. So I've been conditioned every time I see a person, this is going to happen. I automatically am now going to have an emotional response approaching people because of this. That's been conditioned. Counter conditioning would be, hey, I don't actually like getting my hair stroked, and every time I approach someone, they stroke my hair and I don't like it. So what do you do in this situation? You have to work on what we call counter conditioning, which is how can we get this being, in this example myself, to tolerate having their hair stroked. Or ideally, maybe even enjoy it. So we start to pair small, minuscule behaviors with the counter conditioning, meaning I sight someone, I'm already starting to have an emotional response that they're going to stroke my hair and I'm not going to enjoy it. So what we would do is start to condition every time I sight someone, something good happens versus something bad. And maybe that good thing is I get a Skittle or a Hershey's Kiss. And so I'm like, oh, this is a nice surprise, or someone gives me 10 bucks. Maybe 50, whatever it is. So every time I sight someone gives me $50, a Hershey's Kiss, and a Skittle. Maybe I get all three. Okay, this is pretty good. Then the next step would be, okay, so that person is still advancing towards me. Okay, so maybe I get $100. Now I get 2 Hershey's Kisses, 2 Skittles. Okay, I feel good about that. That person started to walk a little bit too fast. I get stressed. What are we going to do? So if I keep going at this level of stress, adding the stressor and advancing the stressor, I'm going to get stressed out and anticipate, they're going to come stroke my hair. I don't like that. So what we do as trainers when we're counter conditioning is we control the environment to the best of our ability in training scenarios where we take the dog in small increments, and before they start to feel stress, we remove them from the situation. So true counter conditioning, not true, reliable, proven methods of counter conditioning, the being, whether it's a dog, a person, animal, doesn't matter what it is, has to have control over the environment and know that at any moment, that person is not going to stroke their hair and not going to do something offensive or scary. That is where you actually have the counter conditioning. You don't have the counter conditioning if you have an uncontrolled environment where the person is becoming erratic and I can't judge, hey, is that person going to do what I don't want them to do? In this example, stroke my hair. So here you have a scenario. If this is counter conditioning, what we're doing to have the dog be comfortable sighting people or sighting other dogs, and things that are happening in the environment that are not controlled, how is that counter conditioning? And if we know, if we put the animal or ourselves, being animals, in a situation where they're experiencing the 5 Fs, they're not truly capable of learning because their brain isn't functioning. What are we setting up for success here? Nothing. We're not setting anything up for success. What we're setting up is more and more trauma in terms of having things happen that you're not giving consent to. And it's not even that the dog needs to give consent, is that the dog needs to have environments that are trustworthy, that are predictable. When we have things that are predictable and trustworthy and we can remove ourselves safely from, oh, there's my boys running around as promised. They're chasing each other over an apple. The apple tree falls apples, and they love, hey Gigi, you love to go and fetch all the apples. Okay, so we're not actually counter conditioning anything. So how do we change the way that the animal feels about the stimulus, the person? You don't. It doesn't make me trust people anymore that they're not going to come and stroke my hair. If someone just grabs me and holds me by the neck and strokes my hair until I stop shaking, till I stop crying, till I stop screaming. What did I learn? That everyone's going to potentially at some point hold me down, stroke my hair, not care if I cry, not care if I shake, not care that I don't feel safe. And that could happen anytime, anywhere, for any arbitrary reason that I don't understand. It's not counter conditioning. So how long does counter conditioning take? It depends on every dog. It depends on the level of fear that they have. It depends on other components that are happening in their life. So what do we do as trainers when we work with aggression, and what do we do with as trainers when we work with dogs that are reactive, which is dogs are typically reactive. 2 reasons. 1, they get frustrated. 2, it's fear and anxiety and overexcitement. So what do? We put together a plan, and this plan has components to it. And this is what you need to look at if you do have a dog, or you have friends or family that have a dog that's aggressive, is looking at is the trainer you're going to hire, is the behaviors you're going to hire, are they creating a plan that makes sense? And first of all, what we do is we say, okay, let's remove all the triggers for now. If the dog is fearful of other dogs, okay, well, let's not expose them for other dogs until we can get their stress level down. If this dog is smelling other dogs in the air and lunging and barking, it hasn't even seen another dog yet, let's just remove all dogs from the equation for now. So maybe that means you drive 5 minutes from your house to a park early in the morning, late at night. You avoid seeing some dogs, and we try to get their stress down. This is not forever. This is not for weeks. This is not for months. This is enough to get the dog to be able to be in a learning state so that they're not running through the door with their nose in the air, being hypervigilant, looking for the dog that's going to come around the corner and attack them. So what do? We first remove them from the triggers. We put in management. Management, big one, we talk about muzzle. We also talk about management as a leash. So that means if your dog is running up to other dogs, barking and lunging at dogs or people, kids, whatever it is, you're going to put them on leash. That's your management. I can't let my dog off leash to go run mayhem. I have to be a responsible owner, put it on leash. Muzzle. The other thing is if they're, we're not going to put them in situations where they're potentially going to see another dog. Going to the vet, I'm going to communicate to the vet. I need to have a clear walking space to the exam room. I'm going to go to the groomers and make sure that I'm not throwing my dog in the deep end when it comes to other stressed dogs, being around other stressed dogs. So we remove some of the triggers. We put in a plan. The plan is always obedience. Obedience training is high up there in terms of building confidence, building reliability. Having a routine for the dog is also really, really important. So dogs don't need to have a routine at 7:01 a.m. we do this, and 7:04 we do this. Dogs need a routine in terms of in the morning, maybe we go for a quick potty break, we come in, we have breakfast, we play a couple training games, and I take a nap in my bed, and I wait until the afternoon to go out again while my owner's out at work. So they have a routine in terms of what comes next. So it's really important for dogs to have that routine. And that routine can be really simple. Like, I always sit at the door before I go out. I always sit for my meal before I get it. I know I'm going to play training games when we come back for our potty break. It could be a variety of different things, but they need to know that what in terms of activities, in terms of training, but they need to know what you're going to do next. So what happens? This is where your dog will start to build their confidence, and their anxiety will go down because they start to know, hey, I know what's going to happen next. And then you're going to see them run to their bed after they've done their training exercises. Okay, I'm going to go lie on my bed because this is what I do next. The next thing that you do is you implement brain games and activities for your dog, like enrichment, scent detection, which we call nose work. It could be agility at home. And we start to do some body fitness, jumping on things, over things, under things, around things. We start to expose them to different things that maybe, apprehensive at first, different surfaces. Maybe we put a tarp down and we put a bunch of empty pop bottles or water bottles on there, and, when we toss treats and they have to move around the noisy tarp and, get some bottles and move those around to get some treats and make noise, and little things to build their confidence, as well as the agility and the nose work. Those are really important. And then you have an active plan where you're counter conditioning the fears that your dog has in controlled environments to the best of your ability. Living in the city, it's not always that easy because you're going to come out of your apartment building, there's going to be 20 dogs, 20 people. It's not always that case, but there are things to do, like drive to another neighborhood, change the walk times. These are some of the things that you will do. You will also speak to your vet and have a full physical done. So if your puppy has been a happy-go-lucky puppy, it's now 6 or 7 months old, it started reacting to everything, it's a good idea to take it to the vet, make sure there's no underlying health issues. Having your vet be part of this is really important when you have an anxious, fearful dog. Your vet, one, needs to know how to handle them force-free so that they're not forcing the dog to do anything and re-traumatizing it and creating mistrust. So having your vet help you with this is really important. Discussing medication, situational or long-term medication, is really important as well. Some dogs need a sedation to go on BC ferries or to get groomed. And if they don't, the fallout of that is they panic and they go into fight or flight, and you know, the trust goes out the window. But if sometimes a little bit of sedation could help them get through those experiences without losing and going over threshold, which is really, really important for them. There's also a health fallout after that. I've known so many dogs that have chronic diarrhea after they've been to the groomer for 2 or 3 days, or to a boarding facility. They've got now chronic diarrhea for 4 or 5 days because they're stressed out. So there's a fallout of like a physical health that happens when we don't take care of the mental health. So just like humans, our vet, we have a GP, we have a general practitioner, your family doctor. When we're experiencing anxiety and having a hard time functioning in the world, we need to speak to our doctor. And the same thing when it comes to a vet. And sometimes the vet or the doctor for us may think, okay, this is hormonal. This is hormonal changes in different stages of life. This could be, your diet could be affecting it. Your sleep could be affecting it. There could be a variety of things. So exactly the same as your family doctor, your GP, your vet needs to be involved in that and be an advocate for your dog. The other thing you need to do is try to open up your dog's bubble as much as you can, because when you have a reactive dog, when you have an aggressive dog, you become isolated and you stop inviting people over, you stop having friends come over, you stop socializing and putting your dog in these stressful situations to avoid. But at the same time, your bubble has become smaller and smaller, and so has your dog, and now you're isolated, and now you're anxious about introducing your dog to new things. So finding professionals around you are really important, meaning having a dog walker that knows how to come in and build trust with a reactive dog, that is competent walking a reactive dog, that is competent walking a dog in a muzzle. Those are such valuable tools, because now you have one more person to help you that's on your support team, that also can give you a break, so that every single walk you're doing is not a training walk. It's always a training walk when you have an aggressive dog, because you need to be aware of your surroundings. So having someone help you with that is really important. Now, on that being said, you also want to have walks that are enjoyable for your dog, which means you may have to change the location where there are not 15 or 20 dogs that they're going to have to pass, or people that they're going to have to pass. And those can be more of what we call our sniff walks, or sniffifaria walks, or decompression walks, where you're just walking and letting them sniff and enjoy their environment without stressors. But we can't control the whole world. We never know what the heck's going to go around the corner. So a lot of times that means moving into a different area. The other thing you need to do is find a place where you can board your dog if you need to in an emergency, whether that is with a friend in someone's home or in your home, and set that up ahead of time and have them build that trust with your dog and build that trust with you. Hi, George. Give me your... He's come with his apple. Very proud of himself, dancing around with his apple. So the importance of setting that up ahead of time when you're starting to experience these issues with your dogs is really important, so that you have, in an emergency, in a stressful time for you, you have somewhere that's safe for your dog to go. The other thing is you have to be an advocate for your dog, which means whether family agrees with it, friends agree with it, what you're training, what you're not training, you have to stick to your plan. So if they say, oh, they don't need the muzzle, oh, they don't need to be in the crate, Unfortunately, you're going to have to listen to your trainer and your training plan and not take the advice of people who have the best intentions but the least amount of knowledge. So they may be fine with their dog. Their dog is not your dog. They may have been fine and raised 20 German Shepherds. It doesn't matter. Your German Shepherd might be different. So it is completely individual. So the importance is sticking to the plan and sticking to the management to keep your dog safe when you're dealing with reactivity and aggression. But I promise you, if you take your dog into stressful situations, like a small classroom with someone like the dog daddy, and you suspend them in the air by their leash and their prong collar, you will not be helping your dog, and you will not be helping you. So, punishment. We have positive reinforcement and we have punishment. Positive punishment and positive reinforcement, the true definition is adding reinforcement to the equation, which is the positive, or adding punishment to the equation, which is the positive. Which could be simple as, I ask my dog to sit, they get a treat. I ask my dog to sit, they don't, I pull on their collar or prong collar until they sit down. Okay, then it's released. The punishment is released. Remove the punish or added the punishment if they did not do the behavior. So it would be sit, yes, you get a reward. Sit, you didn't sit. Okay, I'm going to give you a correction on your leash until you sit. Okay, now you've sat. Great. So added punishment to the equation to tell them what I want them to do. When we have negative punishment, what we do is we take away the punishment, and that could be something that's easily described with an e-collar, meaning the e-collar, and you have the stimulation, which is basically like feels like pinpricks, a little bit of electricity coming through, and you tell the dog to come or hear the recall word. You hit the button and they're feeling that stimulation, and that stimulation stays on until they arrive, until they land at your feet. So that would be a negative punishment. You're taking the punishment away as a reward for doing the behavior. If we were looking at a negative reinforcement, it would be similar, but let's say we have a treat in our hand and we show it to the dog and he goes to get it and I take it away. I've taken away the reinforcement until I get him to sit politely, and then I would give it to him. You can also use this example, let's say sitting at the door. You sit at the door, I go to open the door, the dog goes through the door, I close the door. So the dog sits, great, I open the door again, he goes to go through, I close the door. So in this instance, going through the door to the freedom of going into the backyard, that reinforcement is taken away until I get the desired behavior. So that is the definition of your positive reinforcement, your negative reinforcement, your positive punishment, and your negative punishment. That's not conditioning or counter-conditioning. Conditioning is not a reward. Conditioning is changing how the dog or animal feels about the experience, like maybe touching my hair. And it sometimes gets confusing for people because they think I'm rewarding my dog, but it's not, it's counter-conditioning. So if I cite someone and before I have a reaction to it, either positive or negative, and I'm given something that makes my body feel good, maybe that would be, let's say someone was holding my hand and gave it a nice gentle squeeze. Or the other example I gave earlier in the video was I got a $50 and Hershey's Kisses and a Skittle. So now every time I cite those, something good is happening. I'm starting to change my idea of like citing them isn't that bad. Maybe I do want to see someone else because I'm going to get another $50. And your body chemistry starts to change when you see those. Now, sometimes people like the dog daddy will call people, trainers like myself, hot dog trainers. Oh, we're just using hot dogs. We're not rewarding the dog for not reacting. You can't reward someone for not doing something. It doesn't work. You can reward a dog for staying. You can reward a dog for going to their place. You can reward their dog for ignoring something or not pursuing something. But really what we're rewarding is not the not pursuing. We're rewarding them for focusing on us or sitting. So example, leave it. So we don't reward them for not doing something. We can only reward them for doing something, which would be, instead of going after the treat that's in my hand, they're sitting and making eye contact. So they will learn, if there's food in Carey's hand, don't jump for it, sit and make eye contact, and she'll probably give it to you. So you can't reward a dog for not doing something. This is where the conditioning and the counter conditioning come in, where we use food as an example when they sight something. It's completely different than a reward. So it's, and the counter conditioning is making them feel better than they did before. Well, if we look at that example and we look at, okay, I've cited something I don't like, I cited something I'm concerned, and I've shown I'm concerned, I get a collar correction, I get an e-collar correction, I get a scolding for showing concern. And the true definition, this is science, this isn't Carey's willy-nilly, I just decided this is the way it's going to be. Hi, Amor. Did you go in the haystack to see your mama? I don't know, I think he's chasing a bug or something. So this is not just my own, like, hey, I'm just going to make this definition up. This is true science. It's been tested over years and years and years. So if I see something, I get a correction before I react, what am I conditioning? That's the question. What am I conditioning in that scenario? I see something, I'm concerned, I experience a jolt of pain. Okay, walking along, I see something, I'm concerned, I get a yank of pain. Well, I'm not getting a $50 and a Hershey's Kisses and a Skittle. I'm getting a yank of pain. So what happens? I may shut up about it. I may be like, okay, there's someone there. There's someone coming. Don't look. Don't put your ears up. Don't put your ears up, because last time you got yanked. Last time you got some pain. Don't put your ears up. Oh, look, what a good boy. I passed someone. I didn't do anything. So that's the emotional suppression. But what I've conditioned here is that citing people, oh, we've got two ravens fighting. There's always lots going on the farm. Any more? This is my little cute guy. Oh, of course he's gonna jump off now. So if we're looking at the actual definition of what's happening, we're conditioning our dogs to see something and that something worse is going to happen. So that only lasts so long. So this is the other thing that happens with positive reinforcement and punishment. There's two parts, right? You have your, not positive reinforcement, you have your reinforcement and you have your punishment. Those are the two. So something that happens over time is dogs will continually work for a reinforcer. If the reinforcer is good enough, it's enjoyable, they will become reliable to work for that reinforcer. And again, a reinforcer has to be personal. What's personal to them that they actually enjoy. When it comes to punishment, you will have to up the punishment over time. So the dog sees someone, he's concerned, says, okay, I'm gonna get a yank if I put my ears up, or if I lean forward, don't put your ears up, don't put your yank, you're gonna get yanked. This is what they're thinking, I'm gonna get yanked, don't put your ears up, just don't look, look at the ground. If I go so long without being punished, okay, so stop getting punished every time I see a dog, or a person or a dog, I'm not getting yanked. Okay, so I'm just gonna keep walking. I'm getting a little stressed. Now the owner's probably not so diligent because it's been a while now without a reaction, where the dog is just not looking, not putting the ears forward, not gonna pay attention, not gonna look at that thing. So they've gone a while. The owner's getting a little bit complacent. Okay, that's good. Dog's been good for a while. And then all of a sudden, okay, there's a man with a hat, there's a man with a guitar case. I'm going to show interest again. My owner's really not paying attention because I've been so good for so long. I've never acted out, haven't acted out so long. And the person gets closer and the dog lunges and loses it and is at the end of their leash going ballistic. I don't know what happened. They haven't done this for so long. This is the fallout, is that your punishment has to be continually happening, and your punishment actually has to increase depending on the stressor. So are you going to yank 4 times as hard when there's a man with a guitar, or a man with a beard and sunglasses, or someone carrying recycling, or a large dog, or a playful dog? How do you measure how hard you're going to punish the dog so that they don't react and you suppress that behavior? Because the bigger the fear, the bigger the suppression has to be. Because again, the brain's not working. So it's not counter conditioning. You're not counter conditioning anything. You're actually conditioning another problem, which is don't look at the item, avoid that item, look away, you're going to get yanked. Now the dog's more concerned about the punishment that's coming than they are the person. So you've just added a layer without dissolving the fear and the concern that they have about the person or dog that's approaching them. So that is how the fallout goes. So this is a long video, and oh, it's hornet season and they're really after my coffee. Hornet and wasps. This is a long video, but I wanted to explain why we don't work like that. Why we put a plan in place with enrichment, brain games, obedience, conditioning and counter conditioning, and as well as management in terms of removing them from the stimulus and help until we can have a controlled environment. And the reason why we do that is because it works. And you often hear people say, well, you know, using the correction method works instantly. Yeah, it does for suppression. It will suppress your dog's behavior instantly. But if you're not working on that counter conditioning, and the method that you're doing is scientifically proven not to counter condition, you're just adding another layer to the problem, and it's just going to be a matter of time before that escalates. Which is the really, really sad part when someone like the Dog Daddy has millions of followers. We're talking about millions of people here. And they are gullible and have been sold this method to work that's just not going to work. Now, when we talk about ethics as a dog trainer, why am I not going to do this method? Why am I not doing this when I could be earning $1,500 a session? Is because I don't want to put his plan in place, and then when the fallout happens, it's with your child or your grandchild, your nephew, your neighbor's child. Maybe it's a small dog next door that gets killed. I don't want to put that plan in place knowing the fallout, and that fallout could mean dismemberment, deformation, death. That is what can happen when you have an aggressive dog that has had their fear suppressed. And I won't do it because I can't walk away from that scenario and know that that owner has everything in their toolkit to keep their family safe, their neighbors safe, society safe. So that's why I can put my hand on my heart and say, this is how you create a training plan for an aggressive dog that will work, that will be work, and that will take time. And to find a good dog walker that specializes in reactive and aggressive dog, to find a good boarding facility or an in-home boarder that will help you pet sit, that can build trust with your dog using the same methods, help your dog have a bigger bubble of people that they trust. And I know that this will work. How do I know? Yeah, it's Luna. This little mug is Bear. We used to call her Luna Bear. Luna was aggressive, and she lived the rest of her life, well, she lived part of her life at a dog ranch, and the last part of her life before she passed away from cancer on the farm with George and Amor, her brothers, and many, many other dogs and puppies without aggression. because her stress was kept low. She was managed. She had high level obedience, and she was counter conditioned. So yes, I used methods in the beginning with more with Luna, averse methods, punishment techniques, and I was doing everything I could because I was desperate. Just like the people going to Dog Daddy, they're desperate. They are on the verge of tears. They are, or in tears. They're so desperate for help. Hi, baby. They're so desperate for help. They're desperate for a result. They're desperate for their dog to be okay. Their biggest fear is probably that they're going to have to put their dog down that they love. So what changed for me is when I became a puppy trainer and I went to PetSmart. People like to shit on PetSmart. PetSmart was great. It's absolutely a fun, great place to start. And you learn how to train puppies, and you learn how to take them out in the world when they're a blank slate and condition them to construction, to children playing across the street, to scooters, to skateboards, to other dogs. And this big flash light bulb went on when I was walking Luna, and because I got her when she was 7, 8 months, maybe 5 months, I'm not quite sure. She could have been close to a year. I was a fourth owner. Nobody treated Luna like a puppy. She had her experience where she didn't have someone take her out to these places and condition her to have a good response to people and noises and sounds and skateboards, and no one did that. So she had no socialization, and whatever she had was negative in terms of some trauma and abuse that she had experienced, which showed up on x-rays as she got older. Found out, oh gosh, this happened when she was younger, before I had her. So Luna is not the only testament. There's many, many other dogs that I've helped with aggressive and reactivity. And I worked with my vet. I worked with treating Luna like a puppy, and I took off increment by increment, and we worked through her fears. She used to bite me every time a bus went by and released the air brakes. She would redirect bite me. This huge 100-pound German Shepherd mix would launch onto my thigh. I was covered in bruises, and I had no idea that she was even afraid of it. Didn't have a clue at the time why she was just spontaneously biting me. It took me a while to figure out it was the air, only, not buses, just buses when they went by with the air brakes. So we worked on desensitizing that, and that was over. It was completely over. Desensitizing and counter conditioning works to change the dog's life to have a reliable, confident life where they feel safe. And when animals feel safe, you eliminate a lot of this behavior. Luna was also a classic act like a fool. So she hid a lot of anxiety. And this happens a lot with trainers. Don't put up with that. Your dog's trying to dominate you. Your dog's trying to own you. Luna acted like a fool and would jump all over the place, and it was anxiety. She didn't know that. She didn't want to be aggressive, but she didn't know this person coming wasn't going to kick her in the ribs and throw her down the stairs and, break her ribs like she had to happen to her when she was a puppy. She didn't know that. She did not have a clue if that person was going to do that. So what would she do? She'd act like a fool. She'd jump all over me, start mouthing me. And what she was telling me is, I am not comfortable with this scenario. I don't feel safe. And she looked like an out of control dog that was trying to dominate, own me, boss me around, be disrespectful. All of these things that were not true. She was scared. So I'm sharing this with you, and I'm sharing this blog with you. It's been motivated by the Dog Daddy and the controversy of him coming to Canada. But it's also on a big picture. It's like I also believe in life, you don't just harp on what other people are doing wrong. You have to put in steps on how it can be better. It's the campsite rule, right? You always leave it better when you leave than when you arrived. And I'm hoping that in this video, there are some things here that make sense to you when I've broken down the science, you know, in a layman's terms, and given you examples and analogies that hopefully make sense why this doesn't work. And the big one is, you know, why wouldn't all trainers be making $1,500 a session if all we had to do was pull your dog around by its neck? It doesn't work. Also, I want to add before I sign off that doesn't mean that balanced trainers are doing that. Balanced trainers use a combination of positive and negative reinforcement and positive and negative punishment. And there is a big, big, fat, wide debate on what is punishment. Some people feel that asking a dog to sit and not allowing them to go through the door is punishment enough. If you open the door, they go through it, and you close the door. Okay, well, now you're punishing the dog for not being able to go through the door. There is a big, wide scale in terms of what people think is punishment and what is animal abuse. So punishment and negative reinforcement aren't always animal abuse. Like I said, a negative reinforcement can be putting a treat and closing my hand. Now, that being said, there are certain confident dogs that I've closed my hand with a treat and they still trying to lick it and get it and they have no problem. A fearful dog, the act of me closing my hand might cause them to dart and jump away and be fearful. So we have to have some sort of autonomy when it comes to dog trainers to be able to read dog body language, be experts in dog body language, and know what can we apply to the situation where the dog will respond to well and what won't they, and also how well will the dog recover from that. So if I've closed my hand, the fearful dog jumps away, bounces back, and now is absolutely petrified to engage with me, that fallout is too big. But man, what if they just jump back and take a couple moments to look at me, see what else my body's doing, and maybe come forward and sniff again and try again? Now I'm building a little bit of resilience. So we do have to have some sort of autonomy as trainers to know where we can push the envelope and where we can apply the negative reinforcers, or in theory a punishment. I'm taking away the treat, so that could be considered punishment for some, without a fallout. We have to have some sort of autonomy, and that comes with experience, it comes with repetition, that comes with knowing dogs in terms of their anxiety level, that also comes with sometimes building a little bit of resilience. I am absolutely confident to do some exercises and build a little bit of resilience with a dog and not go too far. But when it comes to something like mass audience, like the Dog Daddy, again, the mass audience doesn't have the experience to be able to do that. So they're taking what they're seeing online as face value in terms of what works. And it doesn't. So if you were mugged and you were afraid of someone in a black hoodie because you were mugged by someone in a black hoodie, you don't get over that tomorrow. And you don't get over that by just smacking an elastic band around your wrist every time you see someone in a black hoodie. You would have to have a plan in terms of, how am I going to get over this? You would have to have an intellectual plan. Okay, so I need to have some positive joy in my life, some enrichment. Maybe I need to do some puzzles or brain games to distract myself, to get out of that anxious space and use my mind in a different way, which, by the way, increases the neural pathways in your brain. So there's a reason why us as trainers want to do enrichment and brain games and activities, because we're actually teaching your dog how to use their brain in a different way, but also increasing their brain activity where they can create neural pathways in the brain, which is pretty astonishing. Not just for dogs, also for us too. So puzzles and games and different challenges that have a positive outcome and you get rewards just for trying can change your dog's brain as well as your brain. So experiencing trauma, it's really important to add that part in. You also add in different sensations. If you're human, you would add in maybe music. You would add in maybe touch therapy, and you would try to use your senses. And that's where, for dogs, we add in the counter conditioning and the desensitization. And we introduce the management in terms of removing from the stressful situation. So removing them from the stressful situation and having, for example, the human nature part of maybe having a warm bath with relaxing music and essential oils. Okay, so this is all sounds like what we call self-care, but creating a safe place for the human. For the dog, we would need to do the same thing. And that's where we call our management. So maybe they're spending more time in the crate, and maybe the crate is in a room with the door closed so they don't have to be dealing with a company that's coming and going, and they can relax. And maybe there's a white noise machine, so we've taken away things that the dogs have to be concerned about. We've given them toys and some puzzle toys to work on. There's a plan. The moral of the last part of this is there's a plan that we would do if it was for ourselves and we experienced trauma and fear, and how we would get over it. We wouldn't just hit the streets every day trying to see everybody who's in a hoodie and smack our hand every time we felt scared. And we definitely should not be doing that with dogs. We need to take a look at it on a whole approach, and one size does not fit all. And flooding dogs in fearful environments does not work. If it did, we'd all be doing it. So please have a review of the blog and what the plan. Please share it with anyone who has a reactive or aggressive dog. This is an outline that any trainer should be following or giving you and your dog if you have an aggressive dog. That will work. So these tips and outlines here are super important. Stay away from anything that's gimmicky and a one-time. There is no trick. People always say, Carey, what's the secret to dog training? Really? You want to know? You want to know the secret? Yeah, what's the secret? How do you do it? It's repetition, consistency over time. Repetition, 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 being consistent over time. And the other part of training is also timing. Timing is really important for your rewards. But big one is just the repetition has to go in over and over and over to create that reliability. It's actually tedious and boring, and that's how it is done right. And it's not tedious and boring. It is fun, but it is, again, it's a lot of repetition. So I hope this helps. And again, please stay away from fads online. There's no fad online. There's no quick fix. It is not positive reinforcement trainers against punishment behaviors or balance trainers. That's not a thing. When it comes to the dog daddy and these methods, they don't work. There's a fallout and there's a risk that could be dangerous to you and your family, which is why I created this video and why I wrote this blog on how to create a plan for an aggressive or reactive dog, because I know what works. Luna Bear was testament to that, and many, many other dogs that I've trained and other trainers that I know that have trained. And yeah, yanking them around is just not going to work. So if you have any questions, you know where to find me.